Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
And we're back. And as we were doing the countdown, go ahead, Jimmy, take it away.
First, David, when you come back, you do the countdown. Hi, welcome back to the show. I'm the host of the show or the co-host of the show. Come on, go through the whole routine. Come on. 3, 2, 1. Go, David.
Back, folks. Thanks for sticking with us as we continue for our Friday Green Rush show for the second panel. And we're joined by Dr. David Cunic.
Yep.
Yes, that would be who he is. And I believe we're waiting to connect with Mark Nejma as well. But Dr. David Cunic is a doctor of physical therapy, but also someone that teaches workshops for entrepreneurs. And his company is either Using Common Sense or Using Cannabis Safely. See,
and Jimmy, I was at a networking event last night in Manhattan. And right before this podcast, I was doing a follow-up, and this woman's like, "Oh, I use common sense all the time. That's the key to my business." She goes, "What does UCS stand for?" I go, "Use common sense." She goes, "Yeah, I know I use common sense." What's the name of your company? And I was like, "Use common sense." She's like, "Yeah, but you're in weed." I go, "Okay, for cannabis people, it's use cannabis safely, but for everything else, it's use common sense." And I go, the very first company I took public, we were actually called IUCSS, which stood for I Use Common Sense Systems.
I like that. I love the play on words and acronyms and all those neat things. So
be clutch at times.
David, your background is so impressive. Can you give us a quick bio? Let the people know that they don't know who you are and where you're at and all that. Your background. Go ahead.
So in a nutshell, I'm a physical therapist, medical guy by trade, but really a serial entrepreneur for my career. I've started 13 companies in the last 18 years. I've sold 7 of them. I've also been in the cannabis industry since 2010. I actually took my company public, and we were one of the first 500, 1,000 publicly traded cannabis companies here in America. I was in the testing lab sector. From there, did some work in dispensaries, grow operations, and now I have an investor relations advisory company called UCS, because what happens is this: at the end of the day, there's a lot of great entrepreneurs in this industry. It's a lot of first-time business owners, but they don't know how to go about raising capital. They don't know how to find investors. They don't know how to talk to investors. And that's what we do. And we teach that to people. And Jimmy just saw us give a 3-hour workshop with my buddy, Chris Vaglio of Rocket Growth Agency. And we taught people how to raise your social capital to raise capital. So we're actually based out of New Jersey, and we have a second office up in Portland, Maine. But I've had cannabis companies in Nevada, Colorado, Oregon, Maine, Rhode Island. But I've always kept the headquarters in New Jersey. And today, my background is Cannabis Conversations Supporting Inclusion, which is a online panel I just did a couple of weeks ago for the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce here in New Jersey, and really teaching the Hispanic community how they can also get involved in this sector, in this industry.
David, and again, publicly, I took that workshop, and that whole experience of the back to the face-to-face communication with people was really invigorating. The New England Cannabis Convention in Boston was great. I'm looking forward to this weekend in New Jersey. I recognize it's not going to be as big as the one in Boston because it's been around, but the cannabis community is a small community anyway. So I'm really looking forward to running into people that I haven't seen for a while. And most importantly, running into people I've only seen on Zoom, to actually see them in 3 dimensions and welcome them with either a handshake or a hug, because they do, look, the last conference I was at, they screened for vaccinations, which I thought was great. I'm not really sure. We had hoped to get a member of Mark Shepard's staff on with us to explain that, but I do expect that. Is there a mask mandate in Atlantic City? Anybody?
I believe not. No, there is not.
David, you're actually in Atlantic City at the hotel. Did they walk you through that? And you're going to have to unmute yourself to actually answer that question, David. Rabinovitz. Yeah. He's in a mood today. I think we may have to check his blood.
No, but like, as someone who lives in New Jersey, it's a case-by-case situation. And like I live in New Jersey. Like today is a great example. I went to the gym here in New Jersey, no mask required. Though I went to go pick up food a couple of hours ago in the restaurant. I went inside to pick up the food, big sign, face mask required. You know, it's a case-by-case situation. Yeah. I was at a event last night in New York City, inside, no mask required whatsoever. Went out for a nightcap in New Jersey. And from there, the place I went to, it was face mask required. Right. You know, it's really, everyone's different.
Right. And that's why I'm always leaving my car and then running back to my car to get the face mask before I go into someplace, because I never know what is the policy. And, you know, I think we're at that point where we're respecting it. David's unmuted now. David Rabinovitz is unmuted.
I showed up I walked into the hotel wearing a mask, Jimmy. So I kind of doubt they're going to go through the mask protocol for somebody who's standing there with a mask on, but not everybody had masks on. I'd say less than 50% of the people were walking around with masks. And David
Rabinovitz, I noticed you actually wore your mask at the Burns and Levinson conference on Tuesday too, indoors. So I know, and again,
Jimmy, I'm engaged to a woman who I love, and I want to be allowed back in the house when I come home.
She who must be obeyed. We totally understand that. David Cunic, in our last discussion with Stu Zakem and Rob Mejia, we talked a little bit about the debate in the community and in the industry about decriminalization versus legalization. And one of the panels that was on display on Tuesday's Burns and Levinson Cannabis Conference, the overall majority of the people in the industry really want to keep it decriminalized on the federal level and let the states dictate their own laws. What's your feeling about that?
So, and we've talked about this before. My very first thing is this: if we are truly viewing this as a medicine, then all 50 states should have rights for medical cannabis. And as a medical professional, and as someone who lived in the state of Maine and was treating patients where they've had medical marijuana since 1999, it's a medicine. All 50 states should have medical laws. That's my overall stance. Now, to answer your question directly, Jimmy, and I'm not trying to dodge it.
That's okay.
Is that the way the current system is right now? Yes, let the states do it as they want to do it. Mm-hmm. Plain and simple. As someone who has friends and family that work for the federal government, if anything, no one's going to fully agree on it. It's going to take a little bit more time. And realistically speaking, and this is where I am not a lawyer, but when you read how the rules and regs are, if enough states adopt the same rules and regs, eventually you're going to sit here and you're going to have the Fed step in and make changes. And the one thing we did out here on the East Coast is we had the governors in several states come together because they were all trying to have somewhat almost the same policy. It didn't work out. But I mean, we had the governors of New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and I think one more state to all try to get on the same page. And I think that's what eventually we're going to start to see as well, too.
Yeah. I don't know. This is the beautiful thing about being part of a historic movement. And really, none of us have a crystal ball to know exactly what's going to happen next. This week, they bring back the MORE Act. You know, the Safe Banking Bill gets attached to an amendment for the defense budget for next year. There's so many different ways and things that are, but I don't expect the man in the White House to do anything proactively on the cannabis front. I do think that he will go along with whatever consensus is presented to him by the Congress. I just don't know if we're ever going to see the House and Senate see eye to eye on this. And I would think it's a very frustrating time to be a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., because I don't think there is a consensus in the industry about what should be done or what's the right thing to do. David Rabinovitz, I know you have an opinion about this.
Now, Jimmy,
yeah,
what you're asking is a trick question.
Yeah, I know.
Because you're not asking about from what viewpoints. if you ask me as an investor relations person, who's someone that looks at companies and who's someone who also invests in companies and assists people in investing in companies, this is my thought process overall, is that it doesn't make a difference what happens in Congress, because every year for over the last 15 years, we see an increase in the industry no matter what. The industry is growing. It's getting bigger and bigger. It doesn't make a difference who's in Congress or what's going on in Congress. It's going to keep going up. All right. The statistics are there. Now, the second part is, you know what? Realistically speaking, yeah, probably whatever goes in front of Biden will be fine. But as an investor, and as someone who invests, and as someone who's in this industry, I'm not really that worried about it, because it's still going to go up. And the industry is still going to be profitable. And it's going to even be more profitable over the next several more years to come. Whether it's Biden, Harris, or whoever the next president is.
Right. Or someone from that other party. David Rabinovitz, you've been muted for at least 15 minutes. That may be a new record. And I know it's not because the dogs are barking.
Enjoy it, Jimmy.
No, I actually respect your opinion. Come on, man. I respect you. I want your input in this.
And what am I opining on?
Yeah. Oh, what we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes. Decrim versus legalization. What are we going to see? Who's going to, what's the formula? Where are we going to end up?
Well, no, your question was, come on, you can't get David off the hook like that, because you're like, okay, what do you think? Do you think just let the states keep doing what they're doing, or hey, just have the Fed step in and take care of it all? So he's giving you a trick question.
Yeah, I say, I like leaving the states alone to do it their way. It would be nice if the federal, look, you just heard me talk about this earlier, Jimmy. I think decrim is much better than legalization. When it gets legalized, we're going to see really big companies. I've said it so many times on the show, it doesn't bear repeating. The big guys are going to come in and overtake the market. And the big guys are not the big guys who are in the market. The big players in the market now will be the little players in the market, and the infinitesimal players will be all the small licensees, which is what we really want to protect. So I'm not for legalization. I'd be much happier with decriminalization, descheduling. Descheduling would be fine, right? Because then we get rid of 280E. And as I said a little bit earlier, if we can get rid of 280E, that would be great. I got a hunch if somebody chases this up to the Supreme Court again, the Supreme Court may actually do that for them based upon Clarence Thomas's comments. But I think what's really critical, the key here is, what do we want? What's really going to propel the industry forward is to be able to cross state lines. And if in fact Robert Mikos is right, I don't think that legalization is going to matter. If anything, legalization will hurt the industry. It's going to invite too many big players in.
And let's take a step back. Okay, when did Prohibition end again? What year?
December 1933.
Okay, and then look at the alcohol and liquor industry over the next 20 years. Okay, and
the first 30 years. The first 20 years after Prohibition, right?
Yes, after Prohibition. Yeah. So if you were to compare that to the cannabis industry, now we're at 37, 38 states have some type of rules or whatever. Okay. If we took that same 20-year window after Prohibition, we're only at like year one.
Right.
Like, if we're not even there yet. We're not even technically at year one. So that's why there's so much more room still for growth. You're going to, like, earlier today, I was on a mastermind group and the question about testing labs came up. And I'm like, yes, you're going to see more third-party testing labs. You're going to see more rules and regulations come across state to state. And eventually we're going to see probably federal rules when it comes to testing of cannabis. And then pretty soon, in about a decade from now, we're going to have a big argument on how many of these large MSO operators are lobbying to have less testing rules because it cuts too much into their profits. And you're going to have purists that want a whole bunch of testing, or not purists, but people that really want to know what they're putting into their body. So we're going to have that whole morale coming around as well too. And we're going to eventually get back to the whole, kind of like we're in the whole organic food. Eventually we'll get back into, okay, I want to have outdoor flower rather than indoor flower. Right. You know, all this stuff is going to go hand in hand together. And we're going to see all these same cycles.
And this is what the legal cannabis community always wanted. And we all knew that there was going to be growing pains between the legacy market and becoming legit and going to the testing labs. And as a consumer or as a medical patient, which I am, I like to have faith in my dispensary that everything I'm buying has been tested, and I can look at the labels and I can see, oh, this has, X CBD and CBN and THC, A, B, D, H, Y, Z, K. So I know exactly what I'm getting, right? I mean, this is what we want. That's the whole point. So I don't have to go meet a guy in the parking lot that I don't know, that it's a friend of a friend. Hey, he's cool. Just check it out. He's got good stuff. Check it out. That was the days. That was back in the day. We don't do that anymore. I'd much rather go to a legal entity that has.
And that's why, and Jimmy, because let's circle this back now to Necan, New Jersey, and how I'm going to bring it full circle.
Please do.
The questions that you have and the discussions that you're having, this is the discussion that's been going on for the last 5 years, 10 years.
Right.
But now people are starting to be more proactive about out here in the East Coast. And that's where, like, we see a state like New Jersey, like my home state, where I'm one of the original founding members of the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association. To see how that has grown in the last 2 or 3 years is phenomenal. But this is where we're just starting to engage in this.
Right.
And this is where it's so important, where if you want to do something in this industry, go check out Necan. Go sit down with Jimmy Young in person.
That's right.
And,
I'll be there
and sit here and talk, and they'll pick his brain as well too. Like, it's one of these situations where now people are realizing it's here to stay.
Right.
And they're finally just getting in. And so it's good to actually see a conference like Necan to come here and do something in Atlantic City, so the people from Philly can come, Washington, D.C. can come, the people from North Jersey. I mean, we had clients here in New Jersey who just didn't want to drive to Boston. They're like, I don't want to go up there for 2 days, 3 days. I don't want to spend the extra money. But they're like, oh, I'll go to Atlantic City. So it's like, great.
Yeah, New Jersey's, by the way, a pretty big state, right? I mean, from the top to the bottom, it's about a 5-hour drive, isn't it? From the Tappan Zee down to the border, the southern border? 6
maybe.
hours? 4.5, depending on how fast you drive. David's shaking his head. David, how long did it take you to get to Atlantic City from Boston today? Take your mute off.
Right. It took me 6 hours total, Jimmy. And back in 2008, early November, when I got on my motorcycle in Massachusetts and drove to Florida, it probably took me 8 hours to get down, around 8 to 10 hours to get from Boston to Virginia.
Okay. Right.
So New Jersey was a long state, and things started to warm up as along 95 South, but I don't think I was on that roadway.
I would say depending which point to which point, because you can also go up by like the New York State point as well too.
Right.
A lot of people forget. So, but
right.
No, it's not a very long state. It's very rare that someone, because it's like a diagonal. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, you're gonna start here by upstate New York, and then we're gonna be on the outside part by the Atlantic, then take a bridge to get over to like Philly area. Like, it just,
all right.
You're doing a little zigzag, and then we get skinny in between. We're like a woman with that curvy top.
Yes.
Little tight waist.
Yes. All right. Let's get back to some. I want to ask you a question about the businesses that are out there in cannabis these days that excite you as someone who's been involved with investing and building companies and selling them. Where do you see the growth? Is it on the ancillary side? Is it on the plant touching side? Or have we figured out now? Do you have a better feel for what it takes to actually get a plant touching company going? And where do you see more growth, on the ancillary side or the licensed plant touching side?
That's a lot of questions you just asked.
By the way, David, I always ask lots of questions, so that way I can just shut up and listen.
So I will put it this way. In general, it's ancillary services. There's only going to be so many plant touching licenses.
Right.
So that's just a fact.
Mm-hmm.
Now, out of plant touching services, testing labs and extraction labs are going to be needed and are going to be in demand. And I think you're going to see that side of the plant touching of extraction and testing labs keep growing dramatically. And there's always different innovations, different things you can do. In terms of where the industry is really going, in terms of growth and opportunity to invest, it really is going to be the ancillary products and the ancillary services. When it comes to investing into a plant touching company, you know, it's going to be the ones that have that game plan to have more than one license and to do something dramatically. Like there's a team out in Michigan that I sit on their advisory board, and they're fully integrated, and literally their grow is less than a quarter mile away from their dispensary. And their manufacturing facility is literally less than a mile away as well too. So it's very close, all put together as well too. And they're already now securing 3 more locations, and they haven't even opened up their first store yet, which is great. So you see that growth in terms of ancillary services. What shows like this, media, human resources, you're going to see more accountants, more lawyers, website designers. I mean, you're really going to see a big mix of everything you need in any sector can now do this.
The projections of a $24 billion cash sold weed for sale in this industry for 2021 seems to be what I keep hearing. But is there ever a rating of the ancillary businesses that we know? So if it's $24 billion worth of sales of weed is happening now, but there's that exponential effect too. So do we know, is there a measurable out there? One of the Davids should know this. Is there a measurable out there as far as like gross cannabis product that it touches all? And do we know how big that is? Bueller?
David, you can go first.
David, you got that?
I thought you're David.
Yeah, he's
Sorry.
David C. You're
ears
David
are
R.
for some reason.
Come on.
So David, you can answer that question first.
So, okay, Jimmy, what was it again? I'm looking at the chat half the
All right,
time.
so you know, I'll answer the question first.
Thank you.
So the question was pretty much, we know cannabis is like a $24 billion industry, yada, yada, of all the ancillary services that can be added on.
Right.
Is there a report? Is there a chart? Is there an estimate about how much that's going to grow as well too?
Right.
And the short answer is there is already some type of measurements out there.
Mm-hmm.
Do I know the exact resources?
No.
Off the top of my head? No.
Yeah, that's all right.
I don't. But are there already reports? Yes, there is.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. David Rabinovitz, do you have anything to add to that?
On that one, Jimmy.
Is there anything in the chat room that you want to share with us? Because like my phone just went on the kablot, so I can't do much.
Phone's about to die too. Nope.
I'm sure our man Yogi's still there, and I assume that Yogi is a male. But Yogi is one of those non-traditional names, right? If you can't really, if you're a yogi, I mean, Yogi was a bear. This is Yogi Buddha, right? So anyway, it's obvious I'm not in my normal space. So I don't feel as comfortable as I normally do. David Cunic, tell me, what's the most exciting new business other than Kind Tap, which is the credit card company for weed, other new businesses in cannabis that you've seen or new products? One of the coolest things we found at NECANN is we found the robotic grow facility, Anaboto, where you just put water in and it grows an indoor weed, and it supposedly takes away a lot of the smell, and it looks like a beautiful lamp that you might have in your living room. And then you've got the Bowl Buddy for $3. You have a $1,000 item, you have a $3 item. Entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well in cannabis. Is there a product or a business that you've seen recently that excites you?
Personally, or like investing wise?
How about both? We got another half hour to fill.
So personally speaking,
yeah,
each time I go to a show, I always find at least one vendor.
Yep.
I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. That's unique. You know, it's different.
Yeah.
I will say, because I've been to 1, 2, 3, I think 5 cannabis conferences in the last 4 weeks.
Wow.
That, you know, that statement's still alive and well. I always say at least 1 or 2 things that's interesting, or new techniques, whether it's for fertilizer or whether it's, you know, limb systems, even to this general tracking, like even if it's maybe non-cannabis related, you know, but it's an angle where they're going to try attract cannabis clients, you know, stuff like that. And then in terms of investing wise, Yeah, I mean, we're seeing crossovers from telemedicine to vaporizer hardware companies to new fertilizing techniques that have a universally research studies behind it, to literally just other opportunities where it's okay, not maybe such a traditional investment, but makes the investor happy with a great return. So realistically speaking, we're always seeing something. It wouldn't be fair for me to say certain companies.
Boy, you're hedging.
Well, you know what? You gotta be respectful, and I don't want one company to get pissed off over another company.
All right.
But I will say, here's a great example though. A great example is a company called Brightmap.
There we go.
Brightmap, BRYTE map. It's a technology platform used for dispensaries, seed to sale tracking. Met the CEO several times, and his product was amazing, and it's needed. And then MJ Freeway didn't really have any competitors, and he's like, we can do this in a different way, in a more efficient way. And the CEO, Mr. Lopez, super nice guy. I'll never forget. We sat down at a bar in Jersey City on one of the coldest days of the year, and the heat went off. And we're going over his pitch deck and his idea and like what he's doing. And it was fascinating. I was like, oh my God. And it's one of those deals where I was literally in the state of Maine this past summer, and I had to go to a dispensary to check on a client. And I'm sitting there, and it's like, oh, the system you use is Brightmap. And I start laughing. I go, what do you think? And the guy gave me his honest feedback. And he's like, I love it. It's better than the other two systems I've used. And he goes, why do you ask? I go, I remember when they were in their infancy stage. And then when they're just starting out and they're getting investors, and now they're growing and growing. So a company like Brightmap is a great example of someone that we saw a few years ago. We fell in love with them. And I was like, this company's going somewhere. This company's going to make it. Another company from a couple of years ago, the Blink Group, which is a vaporizer hardware company. What we thought was interesting is that they're just making the hardware. They're not, making the product that goes inside of it, and they're having everything tracked and IDs for everything. We actually invested in that deal, and people are like, why are you doing a vaporizer? It's too early. Well, no, they're actually producing the hardware for other companies, and they're the ones that actually are making sure everything's every I's dotted, every T's crossed. So there are no bad products that's getting assembled, because each component has its own ID number to it. We thought that idea was fascinating, and now during the vaporizer crisis, guess what? Their sales went up. Yeah. And guess what? During the pandemic, their sales went up. Yeah. And now they're kicking ass again. So that's another company that we fell in love with a couple of years ago that was so unique and different. So
I actually talked to a guy today that remembered meeting me 2 years ago at the NCIA seed to sale show in Boston. And he's in the energy efficiency world. The statistic in Massachusetts that 10% of the electric grid is now being driven by the cannabis industry.
The commercial electric usage, not the whole state.
Thank you, David. Commercial electric usage, 10% of the entire commercial electric usage is being controlled by the cannabis industry. Obviously, there are companies out there that look at that efficient. Is that the fly that's in my office? How did it get over to you? Do you have a? I'm sorry. Let's go back to the serious question. Are we seeing an industry like cannabis becoming more energy efficient, more climate concerned? I do know that there are solar energy companies out there in the cannabis space that are making inroads as well. Do you think the industry as a whole should embrace more energy efficient ways to grow cannabis, David? Cunic.
I think the industry is just maturing.
Okay.
And when I say that, as someone who had a facility out in Nevada, and a lot of people forget, when the growers started out there was a lack of energy because they didn't have enough on the grid. And now you're starting to see states saying, okay, you can only draw so much power off the grid. You're seeing the lack of a better term, smarter management teams acknowledge their carbon footprints and taking proactive measurements. You're seeing the people that just want a quick buck or on extremely, extremely tight budgets kind of saying, well, we'll deal with that down the road. Like, let's make some money first, then we'll address it. But the larger and more bigger players are already being mindful about it, in my opinion.
Gotcha. David Rabinovitz, do you energy efficiency and all that stuff in the cannabis space? Do you think the industry needs to take a little bit more of a role in looking at its carbon footprint and looking to limit that?
Well, I do, Jimmy. And as you know, I'm a conservationist that way. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to get solved in a much different way. I think as soon as the flower can travel across state lines, normal economic principles are going to take a hold, and people are going to find the cheapest place they can grow it. And that's not going to be in Massachusetts. I mean, there'll be some outdoor grows, I suspect, during the warmer weather, and they'll grow it efficiently and cheaply. But just like we don't grow avocados in Massachusetts, we don't grow oranges in Massachusetts, we don't grow almonds in Massachusetts, right?
And that goes back to what I was saying before, Jimmy, with one of your other questions. Everything's going to come full circle. You're going to have the purists who only want outdoor grown, cannabis, versus people that want indoor grown. You're going to have also the people too that want to support, buy local versus don't really care where it comes from. You're going to have all that come out here. Hey, are you going to support a large MSO, or do you want to support a small local business?
Right.
And you're going to have all that, happen again.
Yeah.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge, and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the cost low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.